Hey people, I think we are live. Let us know
Yep,
if we're
that's
coming
it.
in loud and clear. It's me, 2 cents, and alongside me is Gareth Mason. How is it going, man? Did you watch the game?
Wait, sorry, I've got two things open here. Cool.
Okay.
Back. No, I'm good, all good, thanks. I had the stream open for some reason. I was checking the comments. But now all good, all pumped, all excited for this one. Well, geez, what a start to rugby. I mean, crikey. Like we
Did you
said
have a
before we
drink in
started.
your hand through that one? Was it coffee, or were you already on the beers? I mean, it's evening here
No,
for me, so
it was coffee. It was coffee. But for this one, I thought, why not crack one open? Just
oh,
to join
good
you
man,
guys
good
because
man,
it's evening.
good man. All right, cheers everybody. We'll start with that.
Yeah, yeah. Finally, we're doing it.
Yeah,
I think these
people have
people
been
have been
asking
waiting
for
for
it.
this for shapers.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
So
it's been good.
thoughts on the game, man? How did you think it went?
I
Did you pick the Highlanders for that one?
I didn't. I didn't. I was hoping to say well, I was hoping the Highlanders would win. One of the guys on my predictions video, said, I'm too nice to the Highlanders because I really thought, it's a clean slate. It's a totally
Yeah.
different tournament. Let's give these guys a chance. And they proved their point. I mean, they were on it the whole time. It was exciting. And I thought it was a great advert for the start of the game. I was surprised with the Chiefs a bit. I thought they looked a bit rattled. Damien McKenzie stood out for me. I thought he was brilliant. I thoroughly enjoyed watching him. But one of the stars for me of the game was Aaron Smith. I thought he led from the front with the Highlanders, and it made me realise because I've always been biased towards TJ Perenara,
Hmm.
but for me, Aaron Smith showed why he's one of the best, in my opinion.
You could definitely see him firing the boys up. I don't think Hamilton even got on because yeah, Smith was just absolutely, especially in those periods of defence where the
Yeah,
Highlanders were just under the pump, the Chiefs going phase after phase, and yeah, Smith wasn't letting his forwards have a moment of peace. He wanted them to get
yeah,
up off the ground and just keep
agreed.
smashing those Chiefs attackers. I think you're right. I think the Chiefs did look a little bit on the rusty side. I guess they're trying to play an expensive game, and maybe early on after such a long break, maybe it's. I mean, they ended up going for more penalties, so maybe it's the kind of time where you're better off playing a little bit more conservatively until you can kind of get back into your full match fitness.
Yeah.
What's the interest like over in South Africa at the moment for this competition over here in New Zealand?
Look, from what I've seen, the people were quite excited. I mean, I think we were just excited to have rugby back. I'm biased because obviously I just love all forms, and I've
Yeah.
always loved New Zealand rugby. But I thought the photos I'm seeing on Facebook is, hey, rugby's back. There's a lot of positivity. There's a lot of happiness. So I think we all were definitely curious to see how this was going. Me personally, I'm more excited for tomorrow's game. I thought that was going to be the one to really be pumped about. So yeah, I just thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I think I'll be a bit disappointed as a Blues fan if the game either if it's a blowout or if I mean it's going to be hard to match tonight's game either way. I mean the fact that it went down to just 1 point, but yeah, I'm hoping it'll be a cracking one as well. I've got my ticket. The game is apparently sold out
Lekker.
for tomorrow, which I cannot remember the last time that has happened here in New Zealand, at least in Auckland, for a Super Rugby game. We haven't had a playoff game to host in so many years, so it's never really been that big an attraction.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we usually get 10, 12, maybe 15,000, but I think we're looking at 40 plus for tomorrow's game. So
That
yeah,
will be absolutely awesome for you guys. Because what I thoroughly enjoyed about today's game was the electricity in that stadium. I mean, it was almost like we were there as spectators. The singing, I mean, Queen was song was going mad. Bon Jovi's song "Living on a Prayer" was going mad. It was awesome. I thought it was like a different atmosphere in the air for the sport, which I thought was great.
Yeah, it's one thing I actually did. I did a couple of videos on it during the lockdown when there wasn't that kind of much to talk about. So I was talking about some of the kind of more abstract stuff, and it was what is the atmosphere like at the games here in New Zealand? And again, I've never been
Yeah,
to a game in South Africa, so I'm not quite sure what it's like. But generally speaking, in New Zealand, we are a bit quieter than some other places. You know, we tend to sit down and clap a bit more. But you're right. When you looked at those close
oof,
shots at
South
the
Africa
zoo,
are loud.
you're loud.
We're very vocal. I think you've heard it when the ref makes a bad call and the highlights are shown. I mean, often the referee is forced to go back because the booing is so loud, especially when we play you guys in New Zealand or when New Zealand come down here, because then we want to we want to get any opportunity to try and get a win. But no, we're loud. But that's the one thing I've enjoyed about you guys is the clapping, the respect, and all the game, and also less booing when a kicker kicks. I mean, I've never been a fan of that, no matter who it is. But you know, it's sport.
We still do a bit of the booing. I don't think we're quite as good as like the Irish are pretty good. I think for not booing.
Yes.
We still do a bit of it, but again, I've never been a big fan of it because I always think if I was the kicker, that would really spur me on to definitely want to kick it more. But
Yes.
yeah, I
I
don't. I
think
don't. You go.
if we go in the old days, Andrew Mertens, I mean, when he played in Durban, obviously being born here, I mean,
True.
the South Africans, gave him a hell of a time. I mean, they would boo him badly, and I think that's why he walked off the one day, pulling the finger to the whole,
Yep,
to the crowd. I mean, because it's just, and he's still not a fan of us in any case. But
that's true.
yeah, he doesn't
But I
like
mean,
South Africa one bit.
at least that was some passion, right? There's a bit
Yes,
of a bit of back and forth between him and the crowd. We had that years ago with Carlos Spencer. He went down, to Christchurch when the Blues won a game down there, which is
yeah,
telling you how long ago it was. But
yeah.
he also gave gestures to the crowd. But I think that's the kind of thing maybe we have been missing a bit. So yeah, for tonight's game, it was good that it was properly electric. And I think tomorrow's game hopefully should be the same. You got Bowden Barrett first game for the Blues,
Definitely.
sellout crowd. It should be. It's unfortunate that Geordie Barrett's not playing because that would have been the whole
Yes,
Barrett versus Barrett story.
I'm
But
gutted about that one.
yeah, who are you picking for tomorrow's game?
I'm actually going with the Blues. I've stated quite clearly that they are my team for this tournament. I've always liked the Blues, even though they've never been the strongest. But I've been excited with what rugby they played at the start of the original Super Rugby campaign. They were showing a lot of heart, soul, and all that, and that was without Bowden Barrett. And I think a lot of people might have thought, "Oh, Bowden's going to be the boost," but they were doing well without Bowden because he was still on sabbatical. So now that they got Bowden back, you've got Carter in the background as your influencer coach slash rugby player. I mean, it's just so much excitement for the Blues currently, and I think it's gonna be a very exciting game. So I'm going Blues, but hey, the Hurricanes are a phenomenal team. Already some years back, you know what?
Yeah,
It's gonna be a cracker.
that's true. Ribsy has just put in a super chat there, and he says Super Rugby booing kickers is tradition.
Tradition.
I think we even boo our own team's kickers.
I like that one.
Uh,
That's a good one.
It'll be interesting to see how much I don't know patience Blues fans have with Bowden because he is. I mean, he's not got the savior tag too much on him because, like you say, the Blues were doing well this season before he
Yes.
came along. If the Blues had been in the doldrums and expecting him to kind of lift them out of it, it may have put a bit of extra pressure on him. But the fact that they have been doing well, it doesn't add that level of pressure. But if he does miss a few sitters, then yeah, that will be an interesting one to watch. If
I
you look at
agree.
the Blues fans' Facebook page or something after the game, and also Big Will is a big Blues man. He says Blues for life. Wholeheartedly agree with that, Mr. Big Will. Definitely Blues for life. I'm going to be down in the cheap seats tomorrow. Usually I have a sneaky trick because Eden Park never sells out that I can buy the cheap
Yeah.
seats and essentially just walk around to somewhere a bit nicer. But I don't think
I think it's going to be a good crowd. I think people are excited for this one. I think there's, like I said earlier, it's a different attitude, attitude in the atmosphere. I think people are just relieved, and I think I'm myself included appreciate the sport so much more because of what we've missed and lost over the past few months. So I think it's going to be massive. So I don't think you'll be able to walk around that much. But who knows? Maybe you well known over there, so maybe they'll sneak you a seat there.
We'll see. Do you think, because the South African competition is probably still maybe going to be a bit further away, but the Aussies are going to get underway in about a month's time. Do you think there'll be much interest in South Africa for what the Aussies are up to with the force coming back, and or do you think by the time that the New Zealand competition's been going a month that maybe people will be starting to get back into kind of normal rugby mode?
I think it could be a bit of both. Look, I think South Africa's got a close spot to New Zealand, and from a fan point of view, from a lot of our supporters support New Zealand. So I think there's always been a hype and excitement for your guys' rugby. Australia, look, you got your odd fans over there. I love watching Australian rugby. I want to see them succeed and get better and get stronger. So I will definitely be watching it. But I think the hype is more on this tournament currently now. And I think, as you just said, once it gets towards the end and finishes, rugby hype's back. People will watch the good ones. But I'm definitely curious. The Waratahs were shocking this year, so they need to come back. And Western Force want to prove a point and show the world why they should have still been there. So I think there's a lot of excitement for it, but I think more pumped for this one, the New Zealand one.
Yeah, yeah. I can kind of see that. I mean, New Zealand is, I mean, with the All Blacks, it's just kind of that country that people often look to for their rugby, maybe more so than Australia. But yeah, like you, I mean, I'll be watching it no matter what, and
Yeah,
to see whether the Western Force can do that kind of fairy tale story and give their own gesture back to maybe the people
precisely.
who kicked them out of the competition. Will be one to watch. How far away are we in South Africa from anything happening? I know I've seen something about the guys getting back into training.
Yeah, they're back into training. They got the permission from government, and there's talk of Yuri Rua, CEO, said that it's coming back
Mm.
in August. But it's still going to be behind closed doors because, unfortunately for us in South Africa, our infection rates and the death rates are still growing and rising. We've had no decline, it's all inclining because not much testing. Our testing process has been absolutely shocking. So once we get that flow better, but hopefully, touch wood, all going well, August is the goal. But I mean,
So will August
anything could
be
happen.
Curry Cup, or will it be in a bridged Super Rugby, or is it still
There,
uncertain?
there's been no official talk of how they're going to do it. It's all been Super Rugby. I think they want to follow along the lines of what we've seen with what you guys have done and what Australia's doing. For me personally, I want to see if Pro 14 hasn't started, I would throw in the Cheetahs and the Kings just
Mm.
to add a bit more oomph to the tournament. I would also like to see a few of the stronger Curry Cup teams brought in, just so people can see something different. And Heinrich, who made a comment about a month or two ago, he
Mm.
said, "Why not like create the IPL format of a Curry Cup and let the Springboks split them up instead of having your Stormers, your Sharks, your Bulls, and all that with solid players. Split them up into teams that you guys over in New Zealand might not be aware of,
Mm.
and test something out in order to create a bit more excitement around the tournament because
Mm.
we also Curry Cup's not always got the best crowds, and they need to find ways to. Okay, we're not going to get a crowd, but even on TV,
Mm.
it's more Super Rugby we're excited for. So
Mm.
hopefully they spice something up and bring it a little bit of everything. But I want to see Pro 14 Super Rugby included.
Mm. I think a large part of the attraction here in New Zealand, aside from the fact that it's just we've had no rugby to speak of and it's finally back,
Yes.
is the fact that I don't know, people are keen to see the New Zealand teams playing the New Zealand teams. There is just something, I guess, more
Yeah.
spicier about seeing your local rivals taking on each other. Do you think the same thing will be true in South Africa as well?
I do. I think, look, when we watch our good derbies like your Bulls, your Lions, or your Sharks taking on Province, or Province even Bulls, I think that's a stronger one, North South. But there's definitely a more passion and heat in the air compared to if we're playing the Force or maybe the Blues. Well, the
Mm.
Blues are good now, but you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
I think we'll definitely generate something. And judging from what we've seen of the excitement for your guys' tournament, I'm hoping we will see it even more now because we haven't watched it, like you said. and that excitement is going to be there, and people are going to be pumped for it. So yeah, I think it's going to be a different attitude going forward.
Now, we mentioned off air that the fact that tomorrow's game is on at a pretty early hour over there in South
5:30, I think it
Africa.
is.
Yeah, I know they wanted to get that done here as kind of a marketing thing to get people along to the games, essentially, because people complain that the games are on usually around 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Means, you're not leaving the stadium until after 9. It's not the best kind of time to be going to the game if you've got young kids.
Yeah.
But they've really promoted tomorrow's game pretty hard, saying, especially for some of the sections, if you buy an adult ticket, you can bring a kid for free. It's an afternoon game. But, yeah, obviously they moved tonight's game to 7 o'clock. I'm not sure whether that was about the broadcasting deals or whether that was about what the official reason was to get people there from playing club rugby in the afternoon. But, yeah, so you're going to be getting up to watch the game live?
I'm thinking about to tomorrow's one. I'm probably, if it was the other way around, if it was Highlanders Chiefs, I would have probably said no, because I'm keen for the Blues one. But after seeing what I saw today, I'm even more excited.
Okay.
So I probably will, because I think it's going to be a phenomenal game. People are excited to see what the Blues can do. You know what the Hurricanes can do. So I think there's a lot on the line, and I think now that the Chiefs have lost, and I did a video yesterday talking about who can dethrone them, and the talk was the Chiefs. I mentioned the Chiefs, and now the Chiefs have just gone to lost to the Highlanders. So anyway, anything's possible. We don't know how the Crusaders are going to play next week. So I think there's excitement, but yeah, I'll probably be up for that one.
Okay, good man. Good man. That's the only right answer, by the way. If you'd said no, I was probably going to have to give you a bit of stick alongside the 100 odd people that are watching along with us. So yes, G-Man is going to watch the game live tomorrow. So
I think I'm more debating whether or not I'm going to stream it, but definitely watching it.
Okay, well, you guys will have to let G-Man know in the chat whether you want him to stream the game. Obviously, I'm going to be at the game, so I will not be streaming. If you are streaming, I'll definitely pop into your stream at halftime to say hello. See if I can give you the inside word from whatever's
That'd be
going
quite
on.
cool, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I have actually heard that in some live streams. Some guys pop on and tell me, that they're watching the game live, and yeah, it's one good thing about being in lockdown actually is that I've not been using much of my mobile data, so I've got a bit of that saved up, so hopefully I can make the most of that.
Same. I was thinking about that with the whole stream talk when Georgia was supposed to come down to South Africa, because I was going to definitely go, and I was thinking of taking the phone along, putting some good old data in, and doing like a live stream type thing there, because it might be different. And then SuperSport or whoever's broadcast got the rights where it can't copyright us watching the game. But again, there's a lot of detail into that one, but it's a thought for us going forward.
Yeah. I'm actually not sure if you're allowed to take footage of the game even if it's your own. I think at the Rugby World Cup, some people got their videos taken offline, even if it wasn't like people trying to get tons of views, just like sending videos to their family. I think that happened, but I'm not sure how strictly they would police it at Super Rugby level. I know Sky Sports in New Zealand.
A few anthems taken down for that reason. So probably, okay, never mind. Scratch that idea.
Ribsy says going for the Crusaders is like going for the Patriots. It'll be interesting to see how the Crusaders go, because obviously they've got an extra week of training by themselves. So do you think they're going to come back a bit off the pace, or do you think they'll be 100% match sharp?
I think they're going to be 100% match sharp. I think
I was hoping you would say no. They're going to be.
I wanted to say no. I really want to, because I want to see it being competitive and up and down. But Scott Robertson, I think, is a genius, and he'll be watching what's going on this week, and he will be up and down training these boys so that they're fully fit. But I think the same would have been thought maybe from the Chiefs today. There were a few people saying they'll put 20 points on with the Highlanders, and I mean, look who won. So anything can happen, and that's the beauty of the sport. It's very hard to predict. It's like I was watching it with my dad now, and I'm getting excited for the Highlanders, even though my Super Brew says Chiefs 5-5 or 6 or something.
Yeah.
So Super Brew, I'm never good at that in any case. I always get it wrong.
My
But I was
Super
happy
Brew
for
was
the
equally destroyed by the by the Highlanders tonight. But again, I'm not complaining after the product
yeah.
that I saw on the field. What do you think about some of the new laws that they've implemented for Super Rugby Aotearoa? They didn't really have to see any of the really drastic ones in action tonight, like Golden Point. I know that's
Yeah.
it's a common thing in rugby league that if the game finishes a tie, they play extra time to see who can get the first points to win the actual match. I know in South Africa, rugby league's not really a big thing. So,
No.
what's your take on the Golden Point thing?
Look, I'm not too much against it. I know a lot of people saying it could destroy it or whatever. Draws always end for me in such a dull mood when you see a draw. And I think to add on an excitement of another 10 minutes or so to see if a team could get a drop goal or a kick. I mean, look, for example, of the 2 drop goals that ended this previous game. I mean, that was insane. And watching that battle about was for me good. So in order to see someone try sneak a drop goal, be more concerned about a penalty or go for a try, I think it will be extremely exciting. So I don't mind it. But I know people's got their own thoughts on it, but I think it's cool because we're not going to get a draw at the end of it. So yeah, I'm for it.
What
What's
about
your
for
take?
the red? Oh, my take on it. Yeah, I don't mind it either because, like you say, I'm used to it because I sometimes watch American sports. Like the main one I used to watch when my son was born and I was stuck at home with a young baby and lots of daytime TV, which I didn't want to watch. I ended up watching heaps of ice hockey, and
All
ice
right.
hockey doesn't do draws. At least in the regular season, they go to overtime. So they play with fewer players. Actually, they usually have, like, apart from the goalies, they go 5-on-5. If it goes to overtime, they go 3-on-3. So there's a bit more space out there. I guess it'd be
Yeah.
like kind of switching to sevens or something in rugby union, which would be a bit more dramatic. But yeah, they never finish it in a draw. They go to a penalty shootout if it's full time. And I mean, yeah, it's probably not the same as getting the win outright, but at least it's
Mm,
at least it's a result. How
agreed.
about the red card thing, which is maybe a little bit more controversial in terms
Yeah.
of you don't get to come back on, but at least you can replace the red carded player after 20 minutes. Some people have kind of said you're going to get people doing stupid, reckless things to deliberately injure key players. Other people are saying the idea that a professional sportsman would deliberately go out to injure another player is just farcical. But what do you reckon?
I think both points you just said are spot on. I think people might look. I'm for it for the team's sake because a player needs to be punished if they deliberately do something stupid or don't think like the spear tackle or tackling without when the guy's in the air, etc., etc. Sometimes it's accidental. Sometimes they're just not thinking. So for a team that's maybe playing well and then a red card totally changes the game or it turns a good game like we saw today into a walkover, it's unfortunate with that red card because it ends up being the highlight of the topic. The red card got the game. So I think for a team's sake it's cool. But I do agree the concern of players maybe being a little bit more reckless without thinking because they're like, okay. But also to counteract it, players know that they will be kicked off. So they
Mm.
can't literally deliberately do it because they will be cited still. They will miss out on that game. Yes, the other guy will have an opportunity. So again, I don't mind it, but there are the odd concerns that I would have about it as well.
Yeah, I think. I mean, my initial thoughts were also that you may get a little bit of that deliberate stuff, but
Yeah.
I can't. Maybe at a World Cup final, but again, even then, that may be a bit stretching it. I can't see it at this level, but again, I
We
guess
we
we'll wait and see. One thing I
we
thought
don't.
might happen actually was
Yeah.
with the ref today, because there was one yellow card where the guy kind of fell on his shoulder area.
Yes,
Like some of the guys in my chat were kind of like, that could even be a red card.
I thought at one stage.
You thought it might be red?
Red, yeah. Just because he wasn't watching, and to me, he didn't look like he was trying to backtrack from it. But again, I was also curious to see how it would work with the red card story. But I was also 50-50 on it. My dad and I thought red. But then when you watch it again, maybe yellow's fine.
It's one that I thought maybe the ref may have it in the back of their mind. If I red card him under the new rules, at least he can be replaced. So I know, the refs are only human, so it kind of must go through their mind. As much as they're told to follow the protocols and whatnot, that they don't want to be the guy who's the discussion point of the game at the end of the game. And this rule takes a bit of that pressure off them, that at least if I red card him, he's gone for 20 and he gets replaced. Yes. So I didn't kind of ruin the game after, only 20 or 30 minutes kind of thing.
The pressure's still definitely on them. Like at the breakdown, they were really strict on that. And I think that would be a lot of people's talk. And I think
it was 30 penalties.
Yeah, no.
What did you think about that? Do you think it was disruptive to the game, or did you think it still kind of flowed? I find it hard to judge because we haven't had rugby for such a long time. Maybe exactly. I would have taken anything and still called it gold.
Well, that's exactly my attitude towards it too. It's like when people said the penalties, and I'm like, it didn't really worry me at that stage because I think I was just so invested in how back and forth this game was. So I wasn't too faffed, but when I saw the stats, I'm like, oh shit, that's actually quite high. And it's not something you see from both teams being so big. So that surprised me a bit, but it didn't bother me. I didn't go back and say, oh, this ref, or oh, that was a shit call, or oh, this and that. I didn't have that moaning instinct. It flowed, and both teams were making errors, which I think maybe evened it out a bit. True.
They tried to prepare the rugby public here as much as possible by kind of putting out a video which was like a PR release, basically to say, and I know South African Rugby magazine picked it up as well, with their line like, before you start yelling at your TV, this is what the refs are doing. And it wasn't even that much, it was not all rule changes, but more just they're really going to police the laws really strictly, which again is probably something that maybe rugby suffers a bit with sometimes, in that some refs, they let it go, other refs will police it hard. So as a fan, you have to look at the ref's name before the game even starts to get an idea of how the game is going to be policed. Maybe that's kind of why Nigel Owens is so popular with everybody. For the most part, not everybody likes him, but because he's more one to let the game go than to call every single thing.
No, I agree. I think also what didn't affect me in this one is the ref. It was a neutral game for me, so I wasn't really going, man, I'm big behind, and decisions were just flowing by. I think I was just blinded by the quality of game and what it was, the excitement of it. So it didn't really affect me. But maybe tomorrow, who knows? Maybe we'll be complaining about the ref with the Blues or the Hurricanes.
Yeah, I may struggle to have the old neutral,
especially you guys who are actual diehard Blues supporters,
as much tomorrow. Yeah, I watched the game with my old man tonight, and it's an interesting one because he's 70, and the game has changed a lot, since he used to play.
Yeah,
and
of course.
Sometimes when I watch games with him, I am definitely not a real I know every rule kind of guy. Some people can quote you the exact wording of the rules. I'm not that guy. I have a pretty, I think, solid understanding of the way the game works. But, it's always evolving and changing. And sometimes when I watch with my dad, he'll be yelling at the TV, and it's just like, that's the way the game is played now. You have to roll away from the tackle, and he'll be yelling at the TV. How's he supposed to roll away when there's some effing 100-kilo guy on him? It's like, that's the rules. You got to get away. It's on you. There's no
I must say, with regards to watching it, when we were with bunch of mates and all that stuff, I do tend to get a little bit into the ref a bit. I do go for him a bit, but my good friend who normally watches with us, he knows the game. He knows the rules. So all of us are
Right.
watching. We go, ref man, why did you do that, you idiot, and all that. And then all we don't understand, and then we literally go, Warrior, why? What's going on here? And I
Right.
mean, you know the rules, but especially if it's your Springboks or your home team, like your Sharks,
Yeah.
for me,
Yeah.
then we might be blinded by what the ref actually does. So I would give him a bit of a hard time. But then when I
Yeah.
rewatch, I'll go, okay, maybe I wasn't right.
At least you've got that kind of balance that can help you out with that thing. Like when I used to go to games with my dad, like he would take us to sometimes the big games, at Eden Park and whatnot, but also sometimes just like the local club rugby games. My dad is that guy that, at least maybe not now, he's mellowed a bit over time,
Yeah.
but like I can distinctly remember the ref stopping the game, walking over to my father and saying, "If you don't shut your mouth, like you're just gonna have to leave." So
Really?
yeah. My dad was opinionated, and yeah.
I was
So-
bad. At school, I was bad. When we played soccer, okay, it wasn't rugby, but I was told to go off on a game because I was giving the ref a hard time. And then the next game, our juniors were playing, and that same ref was there, and I didn't like him, and I gave him a bit of stick as well. But I've also given, and I remember this, 2009 when the Lions played the Kings for the first time. Or I think they were the Kings then. Nigel Owens was there, and I still gave him a chirp or two when he was close by.
Really?
But that's when we didn't quite like him. But now, obviously, I've grown
Right.
up and appreciate the game. I
Right.
respect these refs a bit more, but then I didn't.
Right. Okay. You've mellowed a bit as well over the
Yeah.
years. Yeah. All right. Well, I think we'll open it up to some of the guys in the chat shortly. Is there anything in particular you wanted to go over other than tonight's game, tomorrow's game?
Yeah, definitely the whole talk of South Africa leaving. Your thoughts on, is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? How should we do it? And then after that, I'll give my honest opinion because I don't think I've actually done that. I am 50-50 on it, but I want to get your actual take on, is it good? Is it bad? And all that jazz.
It's a tough one
It
because
really
I
is.
mean, my gut reaction is like I love the guys having to go to South Africa. I think it's one of the things that helps them grow as players. And in terms of like New Zealand, where we've got rugby league as a competing code. Now it's not at the same level. Like we've got one professional league team and five professional super level teams, plus the Mitre 10 teams who are kind of like semi-professional. I guess they're fully professional, but like
Yeah.
comparative levels, it's 5-1. But that's one thing that the rugby league guys don't get is the chance to regularly travel. They play in Australia. There's only one team, and then all the other teams are based in Australia. So
Yeah.
I know that's one of rugby union's advantages over here, that they can go to South Africa, and I know it's a true test for the guys. To go to places like Joburg or Pretoria, up somewhere up high.
Yes.
It's going to be a big test for them. What I also do get is that whilst maybe in the 90s and maybe early 2000s, people were more likely to get up and watch their team play in Pretoria at 3 in the morning, it doesn't really happen anymore. Like I will do it sometimes, but even now, me with the convenience of being able to watch games on demand,
Yeah.
it's hard for me to justify getting up at 3. Like if it's 5, like with you tomorrow, 5 is okay. I can get up at
Yeah.
5:30 to watch a game. If it's on kind of midnight, I can stay up to watch it. But if it's like that really core of the night time, it is tough, and it is one of the main drawbacks about Super Rugby is the time zone. So if the South African teams were to go north, they've got the time zones on their side. The thing they don't have is the seasons, because the seasons will be run the other way. I'm not sure how the Kings and the Cheetahs manage that. I mean, Super Rugby is a bit of a weird one in that it kind of starts in summer anyway, at least for us.
Yeah.
So it's maybe not such a big deal. Like I know for the Sunwolves, who are in the Northern Hemisphere, they start in the cold and finish hot, whereas we start in the hot and finish cold. So it's not like it's a purely winter game anyway. But I mean, ultimately, despite all that rambling, whatever's going to be best for the teams is what I would want to see happen. If going north is going to put more money into the South African game, if it's going to keep more players in South Africa, I'd be happy with that. Where that leaves New Zealand, I don't know, but I mean, if it's going to help the South African teams, then I would be sad to not have that opportunity. But I wouldn't like want them to stay in the competition just so New Zealand can get some of that broadcasting money. Maybe a happy balance would be keep the Springboks in the Rugby Championship and let the teams go to the Pro 14 to make it a Pro 18. That way, you kind of get the best of both worlds, because those titanic battles with the All Blacks and the Springboks are ones that we want to see.
Agree.
So
Agree.
yeah, there's not going to be an easy answer. Hopefully, someone smarter than me can figure out a way to get it done. I'm not sure like what the buy-in will be from South African fans to watch some of the teams up north. To be honest, like I remember when I think when the Kings initially joined along with the Cheetahs, I think Leinster came to town, which is a team full of world-class Irish internationals.
Yes.
And to be fair, I didn't follow the Northern Hemisphere rugby, club rugby, that much until I started a YouTube channel. So the everyday fan, I'm sure in New Zealand, has very little following of those tournaments. And I think like Leinster didn't get much of an attendance like when they came to either play the Cheetahs or the Kings, because it was just another team. I'm not sure. Maybe you'll be able to give us some more insights about would a South African fan rather go to see the Chiefs come to town than Leinster come to town, or is it just all foreign teams for you guys? What do you reckon?
I think you're spot on with everything there, and I think to start with what you've just said, that is my one concern. Is we've grown up watching our Tri-Nations Rugby Championship, your Super Rugby, and there's a strong relationship built with New Zealand, especially because we've got a lot of people who support New Zealand teams, the Crusaders, the Blues, the Chiefs. I mean, there's definitely a market in South Africa for that, and I see more opportunity. If you want to fill a stadium, people would rather go watch a New Zealand team, or maybe even an Australian team, over a Pro 14 team. For me, when the Kings and the Cheetahs joined Pro 14, it definitely introduced me to that type of rugby, that side of things, because I wasn't quite aware of it. It was more Southern Hemisphere based. So, like you said on Leinster, I mean, I really didn't know who they were. I knew your Johnny Sexton and Brian O'Driscoll obviously played. I mean, he was the king. But it did help me get to know these other guys and also make me appreciate this amount of South Africans that are overseas. For example, Coetzee and Ulster. I mean, they're in the Premiership, but Willie LaRue, Faf, all of them overseas. So that got more introduced, which was nice to see. But I think New Zealand teams will get more of a support base. However, if we include a stronger team into Pro 14, like your Sharks, your Bulls, your Stormers, your Lions, it might generate a bigger crowd, because then it's more competitive. I think the Cheetahs have done extremely well under the circumstances, and they've shown progress. Where unfortunately, Kings, which is where I live, they're not developing. There's a lot of political influence, which sucks like hell, because there is potential in the Eastern Cape and Port Elizabeth for the sport. So it's just shocking support that we get here. I go watch Leinster because I know Leinster. But to go back to the whole thing of this whole topic of should South Africa, to the best of both worlds, I would rather keep us in all four, all three, your Super Rugby and your Pro 14, but still send a team over, but a stronger team. Whether we create like a Cats type team, where you mix the different provinces and generate something big that can actually compete, or you take a team like the Lions or the Sharks or the Bulls or Western Province and move them over, one or two of them. So you have 3 South African teams and 3 South African teams in both leagues, because I don't want to see us leave Super Rugby, because I enjoy watching those battles when we play. Granted, we don't always win, but it's always exciting, that build-up, watching us play the Crusaders or us play the Hurricanes or the Blues or the Brumbies. I've always enjoyed that. So I'd be sad to let it go, but I do feel there is an investment for South African rugby overseas, and I think it should definitely be looked at, because from an economy point of view, these guys, I mean, it's 23 to the pound to 1 rand. I mean, times that by the 22 or 20, whatever it is now, it's a lot of money, and that's why a lot of our players are leaving to go there. So I would rather create some teams so that those guys can join them rather than your Ulsters, your Saracens, whatever it may be. But Championship, I don't want us to leave. I strongly feel we need to stay with that. That's where we've been. I know a lot of people say that we should go to the Six Nations, but I just don't see it working. Six Nations is already got its tradition with your European teams. Yes, it was the Five Nations and the Four Nations way back when, but it's still only seen as those teams. And to include South Africa, I think it will be good competitiveness, because I think we could give them a good run. We've beaten all teams. All of them have beaten us, including Italy. So it would definitely be exciting. But I don't want to see us leave the Rugby Championship. That All Black history is too powerful. Even Australia. I mean, I grew up watching Matthew Burke as a kid. He was one of my idols. Andrew Mertens, even though he doesn't like us, I loved watching the guy. And John Olomu. I mean, the list can go on. But I wouldn't be sad. I would be sad to leave New Zealand, but I wouldn't be sad if we joined the Six Nations too. Ironically, I would love to have an old school international tour. So if we do get kicked out of Rugby Championship, bring back the old school tours where we can tour you guys for a month and vice versa. Our provincial teams play you. Our international games are on the weekends. That will just bring back that old school rivalry. I still want that to happen in any case, even if we stay in the championship. But yeah, until SA's economy gets stronger, we're always gonna. I think Skinny Brew is literally, yeah, he has. People are just gonna keep going overseas because the money's what's better, and unfortunately, that's what they're looking at. It's like if we get a promotion, we're gonna take it. I used to be against it because I thought, are you playing for pride or money? But unfortunately, at the end of the day, you got to think of your future.
True. Rugby career is not the longest thing. You've only got, I guess, X amount of good years, and you've seen from numerous guys. We saw Nihi Milner-Skada on the sidelines of tonight's one, because you really never know when that career is going to be over. So even if you stayed until you were 28 and thought you're going to have a good, 4 or 5 good years overseas, you may not end up getting them. Nothing is kind of guaranteed or promised to anyone. So it's an interesting one with the tours as well, because I remember the tours really distinctly, and it's hard for me in my mind to really think about, is going back to the old ways, is that what is right? Because in my heart I feel like, yes, I remember the tours. They were fantastic. I used to love it. The idea of trying to get a tour win in South Africa was like almost like Mission Impossible, you know what I mean? So that was, and there's been a lot of call for it, like when we've been talking about like Super Rugby's attendance and whatnot over the lockdown period. People saying, we need to get rid of Super Rugby, we need to go back to domestic competition, save Super Rugby for some kind of like Champions League competition. It shouldn't be like the week in, week out competition. It should be like at the elite kind of level. So but people, when they say those kind of comments, are talking about the reason the attendances are down is because we changed to this intercontinental model. But I'm not sure it's quite that black and white, because there's other things that are going on as well. The fact that people have got Netflix instead of, like a little rubbish TV with, not much on is also another factor. There's a lot of other stuff going on.
100%. 100%. I think there are definitely a lot of angles to look at. But for me, Super Rugby is just, although I think this year it was quite exciting before obviously COVID hit, but it lost a lot of that excitement for me. Like 2-3 years ago, we would be pumped for it. Mates and I would get excited and chat. Whereas now it's like, okay, when are the Stormers and the Sharks playing? Because that's what
Mm.
the rivalry through my friends and myself. And normally it would be the Bulls and the Sharks for me
Mm.
personally. But then the big excitement was the Stormers because my mates support the Stormers, so there's our rivalry.
True.
And I felt we lost that a bit because of this whole conference system.
Mm.
I'm not a fan of it. I would rather go back to what we were, Super 12, Super 14. And I'm sorry to Argentina fans and to Sunwolves, although they already look like they're all gone. Go back to the way it was. What the package we had that was great. And if New Zealand dominate, New Zealand dominate. It just means the other teams need to up their games. And I mean, that whole story of Super Rugby is boring because New Zealand keep dominating. It's absolute crap. I mean, get better. What can you do to beat the All Blacks? I mean, all the New Zealand teams. It's been
Mm.
done before. Why not again? Change your coaching system. So I'm not for that excuse of, oh, it's New Zealand teams. What's the point of
Mm.
watching? Up your game.
True. True. If you guys have got any questions for G-Man or I, chuck them in the comments now. I think we'll go over them before we finish up. But yeah, just on that point, I agree with that because I mean, there's other popular sports around the world. Like I think the Bundesliga, Bayern Munich win like virtually every year. I think they've won 6 or 7 years in a row, and people talk about it's the Crusaders that win it all the time. They've won it 3 years. I know it's New Zealand teams that I think have won like 7 out of the last 10, but it's not like at that level. And I don't think. I mean, I'm not a huge follower of German football, but I don't
Yeah,
think the Bundesliga struggles for supporters. So for people just to say it gets boring because the same team wins. I mean, Ferrari had a hugely dominant spell in Formula One years
precisely.
ago, and people did complain about it that it's and they did try to change the sport to at least lessen the advantage. But yeah, I still feel like those were still hugely popular sports that didn't really suffer all that much. Right, Mean as has a question for you, G-Man. Have you ever watched Aussie League, Aussie Rugby League? That'd be the
I
NRL, National Rugby League.
I haven't. I've seen a few highlights here and there on YouTube, but unfortunately, Supersport don't show it unless I'm missing it. And someone from South Africa correct me, please, because a lot of people ask me about the league rugby, and it seems to be quite a hot topic and market for it from a content creator side of things. Because I think I get a lot of questions about it, but no, I'm
Mm,
not too familiar with it. I do not know the rules.
mm.
Um, of it. I know it's different, and a lot of people say it's more exciting. But yeah, no, I'm not too familiar, unfortunately, with that.
If you watched it, I think you would immediately say he's going to get carded for that tackle, and then it's just play on because the league has a lot of tackles, which in rugby have been kind of outlawed these days.
Yeah,
Again, I don't watch a lot of it personally. My dad watches it. He watches all sports, um, but yeah, it's got big hits. That's for sure, and the skill levels are still amazing.
yeah.
But yeah, it's generally not my one. This one from Blizzard. We get the feeling that New Zealanders want us out of Super Rugby. Is this
Oh,
true
we were going to
in
talk
New
about this media
Zealand? We
topic.
were going to talk about this. We talked about it before we
Well
came
done,
on.
Blizzard.
Yeah, good reminder. Also, I don't get the time zones, why we don't just play later in South Africa. Well, maybe G-Man can also help me out with this a little bit as well, but I'll start just to say the New Zealand media does seem to have a real issue with South Africa recently. I'm not sure if this is just sour grapes because we lost the World Cup, or if it's they're in lockdown and they don't have enough to write about, but there definitely seems to have been over the last few months a lot of anti-South African stories that the Super Rugby is broken and somehow that's South Africa's fault. I think that's a load of nonsense. They're all partners in that competition. In
And we
terms of
kill
the
teams
everyday,
too.
yeah, that's right. And you guys killed the Sunwolves. Um, I think the average New Zealand rugby fan is a mix. You know, there's the traditionalists who have grown up with Super Rugby and want us to keep it the way it is, and those of us who, those people who would just want us to go back to some kind of domestic competition. The time zone is definitely a factor, and like I mentioned earlier, I don't think that many Kiwis get up to watch games in the middle of the night. But this is probably a question for G-Man. Why don't we play games later in South Africa? From what some people have told me previously is that they like to play games in the afternoon because they get better crowds, because it's safer rather than playing in the middle of the night, or at least in the after dark.
That's is a valid point to it, because I know Ellis Park isn't in one of the safest of areas, but I mean it's not that bad, but it's not at night time. It's obviously different. I agree with Blizzard. I've got no problem. When they play games at 3 o'clock for me, I get irritated because in South Africa we like to warm up and get our braais going, get our carriers going, and then I love it when we play Argentina because the game's at 9. So we've got a good kick in the braai. We've all had a good time, and then we go watch. So I'm all for rugby being started, but I think it comes into the safety factor, and I think Blizzard's spot on. Could be one of the reasons, or what you guys have said as well, because I think it's extremely unfair for you poor guys who have to wake up in the middle of the night to watch a classic game in South Africa, which could be freaking awesome to witness. So I would definitely spice things up and change it up in order to do that. To go back to the media question, I think it could also be, when we talk about South Africa leaving, it definitely ticks off a few people, because I think different people's opinions are like, South Africa are just doing it for the money. They're just going for this. And I think there's mixed emotions for it, and I think that's put a few sour grapes in people's mouths because of it. Because if I do a video where I'm talking about this topic, a lot of people not a lot, some from New Zealand and some even from overseas are like, oh, just go already, we don't need you. Or
True.
The European guys, no, we don't want you, stay away. It's almost like a lot of people are a bit negative towards us. Maybe it is because we won the World Cup, which I didn't think was too bad because of the success story of it. But I've noticed the media has been, as a fan of the sport, I've got a lot of love for New Zealand. It was the first audience for my channel, so maybe I'm biased, that really took off internationally. It's just, there's so much passion and excitement when these two teams play, whether it's Crusaders or the Bulls or Sharks or whatever, or the All Blacks in South Africa. There's an team like no other. And I think if that final, no disrespect to England because they deserve to be there, but if the final was New Zealand, South Africa, win or lose whoever, it would have been the most watched in history bar none, because it's a rematch of 95 dramas. And it's that excitement that's in the air for me, which I would have thought media would have done positive. But if I read like a Tony Brown or Andrew Moytons, I don't think I've heard them say anything good about South Africa. So yeah, I think everyone's got their own thoughts and opinions. But I think the talk of us leaving has definitely put a sour taste in a few people's mouths, because they maybe think we're just thinking of the money rather than the game.
Yeah, true. I mean, I know the media is questionable, like no matter where you go. I know England fans get a lot of grief, and we often talk about English arrogance and whatnot, but I do feel like a lot of that comes from the media. You will have had it on your channel as well. Like most of the English fans just seem to be good blokes who like their rugby as well, but the media is just.
There's a bloke who's often on my night streams, Archie Adams, and he always says, G-Man, why do people hate the English, or why are they always negative and all that? And I think, you got the odd supporters that are a bit sour, but generally, if you're a good sporting fan who likes to have a pint or a beer or whatever you call it over there, generally they'll welcome you. And I've definitely got a lot of that. Like, next time you're in the UK or England or Ireland or Wales, wherever, have a drink. Same thing I've gotten from you guys over in New Zealand. So I think if we love the game and respect the game, the fans are awesome. But there are definitely your diehards, and South Africa too, who are very sour when we win or lose, or arrogant. So I think we've all got a bit of it.
True enough. Here's one from Jack Darby. Would you like to see a combined Southern Hemisphere team play? This is one
Yes.
I get a lot of requests. Is hey, pick a team
So-
which is made up of like South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, maybe Argentina, like a Southern Hemisphere Lions team. We
Yeah.
never really get that. The closest we get would be when we get a Barbars team, which is largely made up
Yeah.
of Kiwis and South Africans and Aussies. So what do you reckon, G-Man? Would that work? Would there be time in the season for it? I mean, I'm assuming there'd be a market for it.
Yeah, I think there will be a big market for it. I think a lot of people want to see it. I mean, if you look at the history of obviously the Lions have a history, which is massive, but it's such a exciting tournament that people talk about. I mean, we've got it next year here, and people are so amped for it, and there's a lot of positive talk. And I think that the same probably would be over in Europe if we have that opportunity of creating a Southern Hemisphere. I would watch it. I get your point of, do we have enough time for it? Because we do currently have a hell of a lot of rugby throughout the year. But that's also what I've recommended is experimenting. Maybe take away June, July internationals and do something different to bring it to excite the fans a bit. Like international tour, longer version, or the Southern Hemisphere teams. I think it's a good idea, and I think we could be a freaking good force. And then every 4 years you have the Southern Hemisphere versus the Northern Hemisphere team, and I think that's what people want to see is your club, your Crusaders versus your Saracens or your Leinsters, your Southern Hemisphere team versus your Northern Hemisphere team. It's the whole talk. Who the hell is the best? And I think the market there is definitely there because there's a big rivalry between us in the North and us in the Southern. And I think it could excite something.
That Crusaders versus like Leinster question has been one that comes up, or Crusaders Saracens kind of thing. That comes up a lot, and I would really love to see that question
I think
answered.
it'd be awesome.
Yeah, I think if Bernard Laporte gets his way, he's going to get something like that going. But yeah, we'll have to kind of watch that space. But yeah, it is. It's just that hypothetical one that you never get the answer to. It'd be nice to finally see answered.
And I think that's what Pisho wanted, is to answer the questions of the fans. So many people were amped and keen for it, or keen for different things and talking about it. And he was looking at focusing on those topics of what people, the club will go. Although, as you say, Laporte or whatever his name is, he wants it as well. But it's to bring it a bit more to what the fans want. And I think if we can do something like that, we could kick the sport into another level where it has the opportunity to be not maybe as high as football, but it can definitely improve.
This is one I've been wanting to show for a little bit. I finally just found it. Irish fan, I guess, talking about the media stuff that we were talking about, how they can be pretty bad. And I have heard some Irish fans talk on the channel about their media being pretty bad at times as well. I guess that's a universal thing. A topic came about banning the Haka, and he thought it was ridiculous. Geez. You must have had that question come up at times before.
I did.
Yeah?
I did. I've had it a few times, and I've actually done a video or two on it. There is nothing, as a South African fan, more exciting for me than waiting for the Haka. The Haka for me is my excitement. Even on, was it EA Sports, one of the rugby games? I know it's in most of the games now, but when they first introduced it, 2005, I think, I got so excited. I'd literally play the All Blacks every time just to watch the Haka and Carlos Spencer lead it in that particular game. For me, it's one of the greatest moments of rugby. If you can't take it away. A lot of people have said having the South Africans have their own little war cry to compete, maybe, but it's an All Black New Zealand thing, and I love it. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Does it give him a bias? No, I don't think so. It gives him a little bit of vuma. But if you look at the South Africans in response, I mean, our boys get just as animated and emotional. Some laugh, some smile, some want to walk into your face like the beast.
Right.
I would, however, like the ruling of it, of the how many meters apart to go away, and have a little walk up and give them a little bit of your own, in a respectful manner, of course, but just to challenge. Like 95 when Cobus Vissa went straight up to, I think it was Jonah Lomu. I mean, you got to have big kahunas to go up to one of the greatest rugby player in the world, as in Jonah. So I would like to see a bit more of that.
Yeah, I guess that's one thing that, again, it came up a bit in the attendance videos I did, is that they have been trying to make the game, I guess, as inoffensive as possible, and that kind of spacing thing is a good example of that. Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm a New Zealander, so I'm going to be biased and say, hell yeah, we need to keep the haka. But I mean, if you've seen the historical videos when they were doing the haka in like the 50s, maybe earlier, like it's a very different thing from what it is now. So the All Blacks have had a good record throughout their history, long before I was watching them. And the previous versions of the haka, at least the way they did it, was not intimidating at all. At least for mine, it would be more like, watching a cultural show. It's not like a particularly intimidating one. So the All Blacks, I don't think, can give their record just solely down to that. And I mean, there's been examples. Yeah. There was once in Wales where there was a dispute between the All Blacks and maybe the Welsh Rugby Union about when they should do the haka. Was it like before the anthems or after the anthems? And there was a disagreement. So the All Blacks just did the haka in the sheds. They didn't do it on the field. So there was no haka before the actual start of the game. They did it before
Wow,
they
I
came
haven't
out.
heard that one before.
Yeah. It was years ago. I think maybe in the 2000s. And the All Blacks went on to win that game, without having to do the haka.
It's all in their mind, man.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those. Maybe it's just one of those clickbait things that comes up in the media every now and again.
What do you think on that topic? Because I did something the other day on it, of the response of the fans to the haka, like the cheering, the singing, like for when they hear we can't olay the hell out of it at the park. Obviously, England's got their own song that they sing. Ireland even started something up now. What's your take on that? The response.
Yeah,
look, I don't like the booing. I think that's wrong.
Yeah.
But a good chant to it could be quite. Gives it a little fight.
100%. Get into it, man. It's made for all of us to kind of to get behind our team. So yeah, I'm sure there are New Zealanders who will do the haka along with the All Blacks in the crowd, and there are opponents who will sing a song, chant something, do Waltzing Matilda, do Sweet Chariot, whatever it is. I think that's all engagement. That builds the atmosphere, and I think they've even had like Māori cultural experts who specialize in the haka, and from their point of view, from a cultural perspective, even they've said, it's fantastic. So I don't see any. Yeah. It's just I guess the time we live in where people like to get offended by by lots of stuff.
If I have to look at my late grandfather, he would totally be against it. It's quiet, watch it, listen. Whereas me, obviously the other generation, I'm like, let's sing, like Heinrich says, Shores or Loza or Olays or like you mentioned, Waltzing Matilda. It's just exciting, man.
Yeah, exactly. Right, well, we have been going for just over an hour. It's 10:30 over here, and it's my wife's birthday tomorrow. So I have promised that I will take her out in the morning because, as we all know, I have got plans in the afternoon to go watch the Blues and Hurricanes game. So G-Man, this has been a fantastic chat.
It's been awesome. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Long time coming.
Yeah, exactly. I hope you guys in the chat enjoyed it as well. I'm sure G-Man and I can get this kind of thing sorted again at some point soon if you're keen.
I'm always keen. I love this. I think this is awesome. And it's nice to see a few old familiar faces down from New Zealand as well. So I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Exactly right. All right, man. Well, you also don't stay up too late tonight because you've got an early start tomorrow for you, 5:30 kickoff.
We'll see how that goes, but yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, cheers for
I like
joining
it.
along in the stream, and thanks to G-Man for having a chat. We will definitely do it again
Yeah.
at some point, and fingers crossed for a Blues win with Bowden Barrett fullback tomorrow. It
I'll
should
be
be
backing you guys.
glorious.
Blue side tomorrow. Let's go Blues.
Good
Sorry,
man.
Hurricanes fans.
Good man. All right, guys. That's it from me.
And from me too. Stay safe,
Okay.
never give up, and we'll see you soon.